All right, we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Women's Perspective. I'm your host, Michelle Ried, and today we are discussing the Matilda effect and more broadly, Matilda Jocelyn Gage and women's self-erasure in the name of goodness. We have a couple of co-hosts here. We have Annette Sharp from Women's Perspective, co-host.
Hello, good morning.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, you bet. I am Annette Sharp from New Mexico. I'm a writer, an artist, and an advocate for women and teens as well, children, anybody who needs advocating for. I want to help support where I can. And I am here on Substack now. I'm a retired federal employee for the Department of Defense, and I was project manager there, program manager. And I've been retired now for about 5-6 years ish, which I did in the beginning of COVID when everything was super frightening. So I wasn't sure I wanted to retire or if it was a good idea, and I did it anyway. So it's worked out. And now I just do a lot of writing and art and in trying to engage and make new friends online. So that's about it.
Wonderful, thank you. And then we have our guest host here, Lou Kralchev, who I met through school. I'm attending school at SMU, and so Lou is a culture strategist, a coach, a storyteller, and a doctoral candidate at SMU in Dallas, Southern Methodist University. She plans to graduate this summer. She's worked in corporate for many years, helping organizations to realize their core identity through narrative. She's an entrepreneur and the owner of Glumanity, and has been appointed as the National Office Administrative Manager of the Association of Graduate Liberal Studies Programs. So welcome, Lou.
Morning.
Very happy to have you here, kind of a subject matter expert. And I'll drop a link to her organization here in the chat so you can see a little more about what she does if you're interested. It's very fascinating work. All right. And if you haven't had a chance to see the article I wrote that really parallels our talk today, I will drop that in the chat too. Here we go. And it's called She Who Holds the Sky on Women's Self-Erasure in the Name of Goodness. And it talks a lot about Matilda Jocelyn Gage, and let's see, I used this as a lot of my source material. This is a book that she wrote, and the Matilda effect was named after her. So let's see. So Matilda was born on March 24th, 1826 in Cicero, New York. So that is just 10 days from now. She would have been 200 years old. So it's relevant right now, this being Women's History Month. Her 200th birthday is coming up. She was born into an abolitionist family. The Underground Railroad station was in her childhood home. She denied, or access to it, I should say. She was denied access to medical school because she was a woman. She worked alongside Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, but she was lesser known because of her more liberal views, and they were more conservative. She stood beside Susan B. Anthony at her 1872 criminal trial for voting in the presidential election, and that was between Ulysses S. Grant and Horace Greeley, who was the New York representative, who obviously didn't win. But she voted anyway. And she co-edited the first 3 volumes of History of Women's Suffrage. She was adopted by the Haudenosaunee Iroquois Mohawk Nation by the Wolf Clan in 1893. And she was given the name Karenine Howe which is where she who holds up the sky comes from. That's what that means. Um, yeah. So in 1993, historian Margaret Rossiter came up with the term the Matilda effect, which I don't know if anybody's heard of that before, but what she's referring to is the systemic under-recognition of women's contributions, mostly in STEM, like in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, because mostly men get the credit when women do the work, and that's been happening all through history. And as you'll see in my article, if you read it, I recognize specific instances where that's happened. And it was named after Gage because of an 1870 pamphlet that she wrote called Woman as Inventor, where she names specific examples, such as Rosalind Franklin, who helped to discover DNA through an X-ray photography process that she developed. But the men who presented it didn't even mention her, and they got the credit for it in the Nobel Prize. Jocelyn Bell Berner and her work on pulsars, Esther Lederberg in bacterial genetics, and her husband referred to her in his Nobel lecture as simply my wife, and that's all the credit she got. But, those are just famous examples, of course. It's happened all through history, and not just in science, through all, every field. Wherever women have done work and not received credit. So, Lou, where do you see the Matilda effect operating today, not just in science, but in all spaces?
Well, it's funny. I was trying to remember the story I saw on Instagram. Oh gosh, I can't remember the guy's name, but somebody this week, somewhere in the news this week, some guy was like, like women haven't invented anything. Look around. What have women invented? And the woman in the video was like, Wi-Fi, the thing you use to like, promote your whole podcast is like dependent on this thing that a woman invented. But, it seems like in Women's History Month, there's so many stories that come up that we forget about the rest of the year. And so beyond the workplace, where this is happening in the greater culture, we forget this thing. We minimize it because there's no focus on it. And to me, the underlying root is not the innovation, but these greater cultural narratives, these images we have that women aren't women. I'm not saying this. This is the cultural narrative that women aren't the innovators. Men are the innovators. There's a cultural imprint upon us that has been clouded. And I think this goes back, I would even go back to biblical times, right? You could say no one will ever give Mary Magdalene credit as the first apostle, right? Ever.
Yeah.
Because she wasn't one of the men,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Even though she was with them the whole way. And then the first person supposedly, if that's your faith belief, that the first person that saw him after death was this first apostle, right? So,
yes.
So I think these greater cultural narratives that are very old narratives, thousands of years old narrative, have put these, blinders on us to look for male heroes, whether it's in science, art, anything innovative. We're looking culturally to a man to have done that. And so it's hard to see those women. That would be my short answer.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And you know what? That's exactly what she writes about in this book. And she wrote about that 200 years ago. And she was, Gage wrote about the cage that was being created by the church and the state. And it's not because it's divine. It's not because it's ordained by God. It's not because it's natural for women to not be inventors or, not have that kind of mindset. It's or to be subordinate in some way. That's not natural.
Supportive. I wouldn't even say subordinate. Yeah. I mean, you could say subordinate, but I would we have been cast to the role of supporter, right? And not the innovator, not the hero, right?
Right. Well, and even in the idea of sun and moon, and then we think culturally too, the woman is the moon and the man is the sun, and it's just natural. Well, I mean, even if we think in terms of femininity and masculinity, we all have feminine and masculine within ourselves. So if we want to think of it that way, okay, fine, but we still have all aspects within ourselves, and men do too. And so, I read up on this a little bit while I was writing my article, and I learned a little more about this too. There's a book I want to read, I haven't read yet, by Terrence Real. I don't know, have you heard of him before? So let's see, I have some notes on him here. Let's see if I can find it. But he talks about when men suppress the femininity within them, and it becomes toxic in essence. It becomes shame, and then that shame becomes grandeur, and it can become narcissism. But yeah, Terrence Real is his name. Oh, right here. Covert Male Depression and Suppressed Feminine Energy. I Don't Want to Talk About It is the name of the book. He wrote it in 1997. So yeah, I really want to read that. I haven't had a chance yet. And then Carol Gilligan did a lot of work on this too. She wrote a book called Joining the Resistance in 2011. And yeah, it's another one I want to read. But they did a lot of work on this type of stuff. And they talked about, masculine and feminine energies, kind of extending Carl Jung's ideas about the anima and the animus, and what we've done culturally with those energies and ideas of masculine and feminine, and how that stigmatized us and really caged us in and made us feel like we belong in certain spaces and not in others, and that we're allowed to behave in some ways and not in others. And it's really become embedded, not just culturally, but in our religion, in our workplace, in our politics, in everything. And it becomes a sense of right and wrong, of good and bad. And I even think it becomes how we feel like we belong, and how we source our love. And love is just as important as food. We need to feel like we belong. We need to feel loved. So we'll do whatever it takes to get there. And if that means behaving in the ways that are prescribed, then most of us are willing to do that. And I think that's why LGBTQ plus people are outcast so frequently, so fast. And thank God, some of us are loving people that are not willing to do that, and we'll break those molds, and we'll see past that script. But so much of society doesn't understand that. And they fall into that cage, and they don't know it's a cage.
Did you ever read the book? It was from Elise Lonin, On Our Best Behavior. It's basically she's looking at the 7 deadly sins as the way women have been conditioned into not being ambitious, because that would be pride, not being I can't remember all this. I don't know it by heart, but basically the argument is just that we've learned to erase ourselves and diminish ourselves. Because if we were prideful, or if we could be seen as greedy, we could be seen as, just morally risky, because of the, it's not right for women to be this way, to be aggressive, to be greedy, or to have agency. They need to just be subservient and supportive, and so this idea of trying to diminish ourselves. We've been conditioned socially to diminish ourselves, and this is again a very old narrative, very, very old narrative.
What was the name of that book?
It's called On Our Best Behavior, and it's Elise Lonin. I'll type it in. Oh, I can't really type it in. I'm on my phone, but
I can do that.
Elise, I can. Here I go. Elise.
Oh, okay.
Lonin, I can. I'm learning technology. Yeah,
Emma. I see Emma Steele just wrote, "No man ever wore a scarlet letter for worse desires and behaviors." Yeah, no kidding, right? Yeah. I mean, look, we can't get into like certain politics and stuff, but yeah. I know that's true. Yeah. At least learn on our best behavior. Yeah. No, it's true. So, I mean, there's concrete actions we can take to reclaim our power. We can notice the laugh at the end of a true sentence, and choose not to kind of go back on that. I mean, do you ever? I mean, I notice myself doing that sometimes. Like, I'll say something that I know is true, and then I'll just do a ha 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 at the end of it, and like, why did I do that? I meant that, you know. So, I mean, there's things we can do to reclaim our power, like not do that. We can claim our work. We can put our name on it. We can say the thing, whatever it is, um, without softening it beyond recognition, without taking it back. We can cite women in our writing in meetings and classrooms and footnotes. And also, other things like I'll go to Spotify or YouTube or wherever it may be to look for music. I like to listen to music while I'm working or writing. And so often they will give me male composers. And I like to listen to, classical music, symphonies, things. And I have to intentionally look for female composers.
Hmm.
And it's so annoying. It just doesn't give me a mix. I don't necessarily have to listen to only women, but I would like to be offered at least a mix of, male, female, maybe even non-binary, whoever. I don't care. Like the gender isn't important to me, but I just want a variety of people. I don't want all men. And that's all that's ever offered, unless I specifically look for other people. So to be mindful of that, I think to cite others other than men, to specifically go out of our way to look for. And then I think, we're not talking about race today or culture or, ethnicity or religion, but that too matters. Think about that too. Diversity matters. So, I mean, we are talking about women today, but I think just as a whole, diversity matters. When a woman's contribution disappears in the room, name it, that was her idea. Because so often we'll see where a woman will say something, it's brushed over, ignored, like downplayed. And then a man, 2 minutes later, will come up with the same or a similar idea. And all of a sudden, it's a great idea.
Exactly.
Oh, that drives me nuts.
That's happened to me with my ex-spouse. I'm sitting there, I'm saying something or explaining something to him, and he's nodding, and then he almost right at like a beat will repeat exactly what I said as though he had just invented it. And I'm like, I just said that.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
I'm like, he didn't like it didn't even occur to him as
Yeah.
well, maybe that's why we're exes. I don't know.
Well, but it's a thing, kind of back to, I mean, I hate to like be this person, but it's back to this narrative construction of reality of like who comes up with the ideas. The guy comes up with the ideas, right?
Mhm.
And so then the dilemma is you're in a meeting or a meeting, executive, and you say the idea and no one hears you, right? And then a colleague says it, maybe not even knowing he heard you, right?
Mhm.
Like that's the thing too. Or
Mhm.
the ideas are just flying in the room, right? You're in this brainstorming, the ideas are flying in the room, and someone else with a little more power grabs the idea and says it, and
Mhm.
they get the credit. And then the dilemma is you want to fight for your credit. But the
Yeah.
minute you fight for your credit, it feels petty. It
Yep.
feels, like, gosh, okay, here's your credit. Like, I mean, and it puts you in this bad light. So the dilemma is how do you
Yes.
reclaim the idea in a way that doesn't make it feel like, like kids fighting or something, but actually like, so my approach is, how did you get that idea? Where did that come from? And to let them realize like they have no background to have that idea. But then you can say, actually, I said it because these 5 things would make that idea work. And that they
Mhm.
know like you have thought of the idea, you've thought through the idea. The idea has come from you, not just a blurt, but like your experience, your knowledge, your wisdom, your creativity can actually, amplify the response, why that response works. And then the
Mm-hmm.
person that maybe took the idea, not knowing they took the idea, they have nothing. They're like, I, but I do think there's a blindness, a deafness, an inability to see some of the ideas from women because that cultural narrative, that narrative construction of reality, um, just creates blinders. And so the work is, figuring out a way to like raise your hand. But I also think that institutions, organizations perpetuate that narrative, not knowing. And so if you're in a position of leadership or influence, development role, that you can say, we need to be better at shining light on people we you know, traditionally haven't thought of as the innovators, the creators.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I know. Yeah, I mean, I think about, women who do jobs. Women who do jobs that if a man was doing the same exact job, he would have a big fancy title, he would be given respect, and he would be given a lot more pay. Whereas a woman might be called an administrative assistant or executive assistant or some kind of administrative role, but she'll be downplayed. And she will not be given the respect, the authority, or the title that she deserves and she earns. She's not seen as being the authority that she is. But a man, he does the exact same thing, maybe even less, and he's a professional. It's the same kind of thing, where that he may not have the education, the background, the understanding, but because he's a man, he's expected to. So he already automatically, and it's just the way organizations and institutions run, just kind of based on assumption. And I mean, these assumptions again are just, she knew 200 years ago. She knew. And this book is dense, let me tell you. Like it was originally in its original form, it was 500 pages. And then they really compacted it like in these tiny little words across this this book. And it's like, what? It doesn't even have page numbers. Oh, that's lovely. So I've just started reading it, but it's a lot to take in. But it's really good. It's really, really good.
Look, when was the first time you heard her name?
Oh, a long time ago. I've heard of so let me back up. I've heard the Matilda effect many years ago. But to be fair, that was the extent of it. I knew I had heard of the idea that women didn't receive credit for their work in science. But it's just also kind of ironic that I had no idea the extent of her work. She was a suffragette, that she lived in an abolitionist family, that she had done all of this work on, the church and the state, and kind of rebuking it, and talking about how women are so oppressed, and how this was creating such a situation to lead us to where we are today. She saw it. She saw it back then. And that's why the Native Americans supported her so much and took her in and adopted her, because they knew, and they were like, yeah, this colonization is creating this system that is absolutely unnatural, and they're calling it divinity, but they're oppressing women. And she saw it back then. I had no idea. So yeah, I mean, I could say I heard her name a long time ago, but really,
we don't know her name. I never heard her name.
I just
I'm
learned
close
her
to
name.
60 years old, and I've never heard of her, and she should be heard of, right? The fact that it's another one of these stories that this was a little too hot, a little too aggressive, a little too forceful, a little too blinding, right? Like, let's just keep this one under wraps, right? And I think it's back to like the stories we know, the lore we know. I would say we're American, right? The lore we know is very masculine. The heroes are masculine. And you might have one or two. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, they came out with the Susan B. Anthony coin.
Yes.
In the 70s. Have we seen one since? Are we giving them to our daughters? Are we, you know what I mean? Like it's this idea, again, minimization of a story that's not widely told. And I think, to shift the narrative, the stories have to be told. There's a lot of stories to tell, but I think this was a very good start. Your article was so well written.
Thank you.
Yeah. But I think
Well,
there's
I mean,
also this idea of like this trope of the exceptional woman, right? Susan B. Anthony. We remember her name. We don't know any of the other suffragettes' names by heart. We could look them up, but we don't know them by heart, right? And just that idea of a Marie Curie, one of these exceptional women, they stand out as exceptional, and then it just reinforces the assumption that other women are not. Like,
exactly.
and so there's this, like, again, double-edged sword of, how do we tell our stories in a way that amplifies the heroes, not just as men. I'm not saying men didn't do heroic thing. I'm not even saying that. It's just there's this, Camille Claudel, right, with Rodin, right? She was the sculptor, she was the one, and he got all the credit,
No, it's balance. It's 100% should be balance. I mean, I'm not feminist who's against men, and I don't think that's what feminism is. Yeah, I think it's all about
but it's
balance.
The stories haven't been told. The full stories haven't been told. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm raising my kids that way too. My boys, like they're feminists too, and I think that's like a good thing. I don't think it's a dirty word, and I think men have to embrace their feminine side too. I think it's healthy, and as I was just talking about, men who suppress their feminine side end up. I mean, like I'm just gonna say it, like Hegseth. I mean, it's an example of toxic masculinity, and it's just unhealthy.
I have something to say about that. I don't think by the time you're a man in your 20s, 30s, 40s, you were already trained coming out of the birth canal how to be a boy, So really a lot of this starts in those early years to allow the boys to cry, to not to feel their emotions. Like we are responsible for how we're raising our children every day. If we can talk a big talk about, oh, women need recognition, men need to have feelings. Well, start raising your children the way you want your daughter to exist in the world, the way you want your son to treat his woman, his daughters, other women in the workplace. It's just, it starts young. It starts with us as parents. And, then we can say, but then they go to school and they learned other things, how to be, well, then speak up, go to school and tell the teacher, this is what I expect for you to treat my daughter in the classroom. She's coming home and telling me she's raising her hand and Billy gets picked every time. You know what I mean? So we have to speak up.
Yep. Or your children learn to become leaders too, and they go to school and they teach the other kids how to be.
Exactly.
Which, my kids have absolutely done, and I was so proud of my little boy when he was in, I think it was second grade, and he told me, what was it? I'm trying to remember how the scenario went, but he said, we were talking about what it meant to be transgender. And he had said if one of his friends that were boys came to school wearing a dress, and if anybody picked on him, he would come to school wearing a dress too. And I just started crying. I was so proud of him.
Like, full advocacy. It's like the kids when one of their friends gets cancer and all the kids shave their head, right? It's that same sort of like solidarity of,
that's right.
You get to be exactly who you are, and we're going to love you the way you are, and we're going to support you and do something that signals that support,
That's right. And you're not threatened. Your femininity, your masculinity, it's not threatened because of somebody else's, be who you are.
But I do agree with you, and it does start young. And so many of these bigger narratives are started, you're unaware of them. We're unaware of them. We have no narrative awareness of, why do I believe this? Where did this come from? When did I get that story? How old is that story that's been passed down to me? And I think that is the work of at least my work, is just to create this idea of like, question those narratives and assumptions, because so much of it is passed down, not even verbally, just through signals, just through visuals, just through, I well, this is, when the George Floyd tragedy happened, I said, every television show in Hollywood has perpetuated this narrative that these people are bad and these people are good. My husband's from Eastern Europe, and like, he's typecast as a mobster, right? No matter what, every show, right? Like, and so this idea of, how are we perpetuating these narratives in stories, in media, in television, in movies, in books, and novels, in social media? So much of this stuff is perpetuated, not knowing we're perpetuating it. And so can we pull back on the stories, or question? But look at how, the minute you do, there's a fight against it. There's a resistance to it. A cultural resistance to, well, you're getting too much DEI, you're telling too many women's stories now, you're, and so it's this thing of, the resistance is really a narrative resistance that we have to like fight against and ask. But you don't just shove it in their face. You ask them, where did this come from? Why do you think this? How old do you think this is? And then people start to recognize, like, oh, yeah, this, and it's hard. Like, when you're in the workplace, you're trying to, again, fight the Matilda effect in the workplace. And again, it's like, I call it a gentle, slow drip that you have to constantly showcase, highlight, spotlight, and recognize, right? Recognize contributions from everyone without it feeling like a DEI, I just think there's a different approach.
Yeah, it's so hard, because institutionally, culturally, religiously, and then, as Annette was saying, from in the family sense, it's brought in from all angles. So how do we see above it? And I think Annette was right, really. I mean, it starts in the family, and it starts from a very young age. And if you're just brought up that way, to really to know, to be in touch with your feelings and to stand up for one another, that overrides everything. And then, as you're going up through, whether that's, in your community, in your faith, in your organization, you're going to carry that with you, and it's going to be really hard to break that. I mean, we might have to mute ourselves a little bit to fit in with our workplace, or depending on where it is that we work. I mean, I don't know. I'm very fortunate. I think, where I work, I love my workplace. We're all very good to one another, I think, but but that's not true everywhere. And it's we can just people have to override who they are a lot to fit in, to belong. I'm trying to read the comments here. So Harriet says, a woman from a TV show came to mind, Xena, a fighter, not your average woman, but a heroine in the story. It's a popular show. When I was a kid, yeah.
I love that show.
Me too.
Warrior, what was it? Xena
Warrior Princess.
Warrior Princess, yes.
It was filmed in Bulgaria too. Random fact.
And New Zealand. And in New Zealand.
Oh yeah.
So I was going to say, where I threw out, when a man is in their 20, 30, 40s, it's hard for them to realize and to make any changes. I just wanted to say that I do think that doing like talks like this, like Substack, is a great platform for enlightening each other and sharing information. And I think people can learn. I know where I'm at today personally is not where I was maybe 10 years ago in the way that I think about people overall. And, and that is, and a lot of people are this way. It comes from, like I said, how you were raised, who you were hanging out with, who your inner circle was for years and years. And then somehow, if things start shifting or you start receiving new information, start reading articles that start to shift your mind, even us old people, older people can start seeing things in a new light, because at one point, and I'll just throw this out there for an example. I was very hard right in politics a few years ago, and it came from my inner circle and my family and traditions that I was raised within. But then since I've kind of moved away and had more exposure to different points of view over the past few years, I have made huge shifts in the way that my perspective about certain groups of people or certain just generalized world topics and things. So I think we can start educating people to maybe come together more towards a center of, like you said, balance, and it just takes time. But everything that we do to try and help, you know, inform people and help them see another point of view, even if they are on one side, um, they can slowly change. I read an article recently about a real life experience that a LGBTQ person had with a neighbor of hers who was an old, hard right Republican man who didn't like gays and always trashed on them and stuff. And one day, I mean, and they had been like having coffee every morning. And this is a woman. And, they were just great friends, great neighbors. But he was always doing that. And she looked at him and she says, well, yeah. And she had her partner with her several times, and he just like thought they were friends, right? And so she finally started telling him no, because he was flirting with her partner. Okay, I can't even remember who this was that I read this from, but she says, this is my partner, and I am a lesbian woman. And so it was like enlightening to him that he kept trashing this group of people. And little did he know, or he slowly had to come to this realization that this person, this neighbor that he really loved and really had enjoyed coffee mornings with, was in fact part of a group that he'd been cutting down all the time. So it was just and then they had like this slow evolution of his way of thinking, and here he is, this man in his late 60s, early 70s, learning about people and how his perspective had been wrong all this time. So
That's good. They changed. I mean, you gotta, because then he's gonna reconcile love your neighbor with that hatred and realize the hatred is wrong.
But it's also looped into the assumptions of who these people are, right? I've assumed they, them, those over there, right? Not right here, right now in my face.
Real people.
People I like, people I can connect with, people who I see their humanity, right? And so the minute we're like in the they, them, those, we've just put a big bubble around them and we don't know them, and that's on all sides. It's like right, left, middle, up, down, side to side. Like we just will do that. I think, and this is such a good example, Annette, of, helping people face their assumptions, right? And not being, I don't mean to be just such a pacifist, but it's not about combativeness. It's really about offering them a question to help them examine their own assumptions and values and beliefs, right? And again, some of those were passed down from 60, 70 years ago, and a lot has changed since then, right? And
It
to
has.
now to just go, why do even your journey, talking about maybe your own, fluctuation on the scale of politics, right? It's because you took a moment to examine that doesn't jive with me anymore. That doesn't align with the values I have today. It might have aligned with values I had 10 years ago, but that is the thing. I think for us in any uh, journey that we're trying to enlighten people on is help people stop and examine their contradictions. Help people,
Hmm.
and not in a cruel way, not in a gotcha, but in a,
No,
where did this come from, and how do you think that adjusts? How do you feel about that? And I think as women, we are wired so well for those kind of conversations.
absolutely. As a calling in. Yeah.
Yeah. But it takes time, and I think people are so busy, and they're so bombarded with messages and identity messages and belonging messages that they forget, like,
Mhm.
wow, this is the message they're yelling at me, but this doesn't align with what feels right, what feels good, whatever faith or philosophy or ideology one follows. Wait, this is a contradiction to that. This is in direct conflict with what I really think about people.
Yeah, and you can pick up
Well,
on those, but there's always the people who have influence, right? People
Absolutely.
with more power who love the division. They
Mm-hmm.
love the separate
Mm-hmm.
camps. And there are also so many human beings who want to belong in the
Absolutely.
world that they will pick camps and
Yeah.
go be in them.
And just be safe and cozy in them, but not well in them.
Yeah, and
Right.
then that
Yeah.
way everybody starts going, those people over there and them over there.
Yeah.
And then we've got like constantly separation and we get to
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
just be in dysfunction all the time. And I
But
mean,
I do think we are as women, we are the gatherers, we are the communers, we are the ones that will pull people in. And I think that if there's any advantage we have, it's that we know how to do that really well. Usually, I'm not saying everyone, but like I would say in general, we have that superpower to draw people together and impart a wisdom in a different voice
Yeah.
that, in my opinion, disrupts from the bigger, louder, more influential voices. And it's those whispers and those calls and those, um, I'm not even trying to say be soft. You can be loud, you can be, but I do think we have a different voice that sets us apart. We just got to use it.
Well, I've got a question for you then, Lou. So I guess like on a on a familial and community level, I think the softer approach works, more than maybe not softer, but natural approach works, the organic approach works, where that we get to know somebody and we see their humanity and it just organically happens and it arrives and we see one another and then change happens, right? And then we get to call one another in and these things happen. But institutionally, how do we affect that kind of change? And from your cultural strategy work that you've done,
Mhm.
your professional work, especially in corporate, what type of interventions actually work to move systems?
I think the stories we tell in those institutions, I've been in, I could just laugh. I've been in the institutions that have the sterile, empty, hollow pillar constructs, that have no soul. And I've been in the organizations that had soul. I've worked with organizations, I've worked in them. And the ones that flourished were the ones that were very human, and they told human stories. They didn't tell anecdotes from other brands. They told their own stories. They highlighted people within their own stories. I mean, some of my favorite stories, to this day, were like the recognition stories of, the line cook in Malaysia. I mean, I'm just so sure this is a true story. There's a line cook in Malaysia who didn't even speak the local language. she was homeless. She went into the restroom in the mall to like clean herself up and saw a sign for help wanted. And she was like, to do a dishwasher. And every day she just watched these cooks while she's watching. She just watched with these cooks. And a cook called in sick. And she's like, I can do it. I know I can cook. And they were like, you don't know how to do this. And she's like, I can cook. And she gets in there and she's organized. And she winds up growing and becoming like, this manager of, and then a director of operations. But the story of her journey and her perseverance but I will never forget that story in my entire life. I could tell that story verbatim about this remarkable young woman and her, perseverance. But why did that resonate? It was a real story about a real person in a real company that was, with someone to highlight, to showcase, right? And then you get the stories that organizations that don't know how to tell their stories are telling this, financial story of sales and profits, and like they don't resonate at all. They're numbers. But so I would say I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I would just say that
I see where you're going.
If you want to change an institution, change the stories you tell.
Yeah.
In the institution. If you want to amplify who people are, who we are as a brand, as an organization, as an institution, tell the stories of the people inside it. And then you tell the human stories. And then people really resonate. And then people see the invisible dishwasher all of a sudden. Right? I mean, I'm saying this, but I'm just saying, like, we minimize people in different departments or different roles. And again, you were saying like an administrative role, and suddenly you tell that story about this person that's literally saved the company $70 million or, saved us from the brink of death, and it's like, I respect all the administrative assistants so much more because we don't ever realize what they do, So that's kind of an example I would give.
Yeah, I hear you. I took a course we have a professor, she's actually an assistant dean now, I think, Rachel Ball Phillips at SMU, and brilliant woman. I just love her fire. I really do. I respect her a lot. She's really brilliant. I took an understanding strategy course with her last year, and so it was partially about business and understanding how business works, and then understanding strategy and how it's been used throughout time around the world, and kind of putting the two together. And one thing I kind of took away from that, and applies here, and I think kind of what you were saying, Lou, have you all ever seen the movie Monsters, Inc.?
Yes.
It's a children's movie. Follow me here. Yes, it's important. Well, now I'm going to give away the end, so I'm sorry. But so close your ears if anybody hasn't seen it and they don't know the end. But they scare these monsters. It's a cute movie. It's not scary, but these monsters, these fluffy, cute monsters come in and they scare children. And they collect their energy from scaring them, and that's how they power their little monster underworld. Well, in the end, they find that by making them giggle, by making them happy, they actually collect more energy. So to me, that told a story of strategy, and it's a different strategy. It's like Costco versus Sam's Club. Costco includes DEI. They take care of their employees. They take care of their customers. They do all the right things. They have better pricing. They do very well. They make more profit. They do better overall. They have a better business strategy. So that they're like the equivalent of the Monsters, Inc. that is making the kids giggle. They're collecting more energy. They're doing better. Sam's Club, on the other hand, owned by Walmart, they're doing all the scary stuff. And you might think, oh, they're not giving their employees benefits, or not much for benefits. They're not inclusive. They're not doing the DEI thing. They're jacking the prices up. They have lower quality products. The CEOs at the top are taking more money for themselves. So they're probably making a lot more money, right? Because they're doing all these things to skimp so they can get more money. Well, guess what? Yeah, no, they're not. No, they're
Yeah.
not. They're not profiting. They're not flourishing. They're not doing well at all. So they're kind of the equivalent of the bad Monsters Inc. that was doing all the scaring and all the bad practices. So, it's really the same principle. When we do the good things that are good for humanity, we flourish. And, it's the same idea. And I see that too in the businesses. Oh gosh, hold on, sorry, my music just started for no reason whatsoever.
We're
I
rocking
just
out.
stopped it.
Everybody dance party right now. 1 minute.
Dance
Come back.
party, yes. But yeah, it's the same principle anyway. So I think, if I kind of lost my train of thought a little bit because that music scared
No,
me.
you were just comparing Costco to Sam
Yeah,
as far as, which one is flourishing from a strategic
yeah.
perspective. But look, I mean, back to how people have been taught to lead organizations. They've been taught this grip, this lockdown, this kind of, a bit of a stress all the time, a little bit of a anxiety environment, and it's countercultural what a Costco does, right? It's not taught. That's not
Well, because the
considered
story, right? The
Yeah.
story is that if we're real tough on people and we're tight on money, that it's good for business.
But where does this come
That's
from? Look at the
not
roots.
true.
Look at the roots of this ideology. This
Leadership.
comes from slavery. This is literally from leftover remnant of slavery that has continued on into work into
Well,
the
it's
Industrial Revolution to modern to our time.
You're exactly right,
Ah.
because there's two forms of leadership, right? The one that sits behind the employees, like the stagecoach driver, and the people, the workers are like the horses pulling, right? He's got the whip, and then there's the leader who's out front showing the way and bringing the employees. So
Yeah.
it's dynamics. How different companies function, the energy within the workplace, the behaviors, the what is acceptable, how people are treated within companies, how you treat your customers. It all is coming in by who is the leader, who is showing, who's in power and showing this behavior, and that is what the people will follow and how they're going to behave and how the dynamic is going to be in the workplace. As soon as you get a different leader in there, just think of presidents, how people start, groups start shifting, and what's popular changes and all of this. But anyway, that's my 2 cents.
And I think it's also like down to like this concept that, again, it's an undercurrent of either scarcity or abundance, right? And that's, if you lead from that angle, your behaviors will change, and I see the Costco is the abundant thinker and Sam's as the scarcity. There's not enough margin, can't pay people $25 an hour, Costco can.
Right.
And offer great benefits. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, and then another thing I guess I wanted to make sure we talked about before we run out of time, we're getting close, was, the bring it home to the personal. So there's 3 mechanisms that we do to kind of minimize ourselves, to shrink ourselves. Why do we do this? Why do we, us women, why do we shrink ourselves? There's stereotype threat. The story doesn't stay outside. It enters self-evaluation and shapes performance and confidence. Imposter syndrome, which, Lou, I know there was just a conversation at SMU about that. Feeling like a guest in rooms built for someone else, not an individual confidence problem, but a structural one. And then backlash avoidance. Women who self-promote or claim credit without apology are judged as unlikable, abrasive, or too much. So they adapt, hedge, and say we when they mean I. And these aren't separate problems. They're related expressions of one condition, living in a world that punishes women for visible authority and calls the resulting self-minimization natural. So yeah, could either of you speak to any of that? Stereotype, threat, imposter syndrome, or backlash avoidance?
I can definitely talk about the saying we instead of I. I've done that almost my entire life, never taking on the power of a decision, that is positive or negative even, and always creating the we, to keep myself smaller, and I think it's partly for acceptance that I would do that, even in the workplace, as far as keeping small, because because when you step up, and if you're not in the whatever tier you're in, and you might be in this tier down on the bottom, just a worker bee, but if you step up and start trying to show your great ideas or whatever, I don't know, I just think it's easy to start coming across as a know-it-all, or I've seen women who are actual supervisors, who wield that power of being a supervisor in the same way as a male supervisor. We've got two equals, same position, acting in the same way. And the woman, people are talking behind her back about how she is a bitch, basically. And he is, wow, he's a powerful leader, but she's a bitch. So that's just what I've noticed.
Yeah, no, you're right. I hear you. It's hard to lead with authority when you're not taken seriously, and any kind of authority that you do take is minimized and discredited and looked down upon. So how are you supposed to be taken seriously?
I think we have to stand in it and weather the storms regardless, and don't allow ourselves to pull back, because when you pull back, you're still not going to get that respect. You're still not going to be shuttled along into the better rooms, or the better conversations. We have to stand and hold ourselves, even when people are trying to make us trying to make you be smaller.
Yeah.
Because if you go with it, you're still not going to get the respect. So you might as well stand up regardless.
That speaks to, we have a professor, Dr. John Potter at SMU, and I'm in his class right now on generational conflict, and he teaches moderation and mediation. Sorry, mediation. Anyway, so we were doing a mediation facilitation, like a role playing thing in class last week. And he said something that was so moving, I thought, to women specifically. And he said, when a man tries to intimidate a woman, the worst thing she can do is step back, literally or figuratively. Don't do it. Don't step back. And if he tries to speak over her, tell him, I wasn't done speaking yet. Give him one warning. If he does it again, tell him, you did it once before. This isn't productive. You spoke over me. Don't do it again. Be clear about it. And if he does it a third time, leave the conversation. Tell him, this has not been a productive conversation. You've spoken over me 3 times now, and it's time for me to go. And don't continue to participate in the conversation. So he was very clear about that, and he told us to stand our ground. And I think I've seen Kamala Harris do that before. I think I've seen her in discussions use that same technique.
When you were Annette, when you were saying, how do you stand, right? And how do you stay? I think when you were speaking, I thought, actually, and I've never done this, so, anyone who tries this, don't blame me if it doesn't go right. But I think it's actually call out not the hypocrisy, but why this doesn't resonate. So when, again, the female supervisor does the exact same thing as her male supervisor, she probably learned from, right? Like, this is how to do this. I'm going to try to do the same thing. And then everyone's like, she's so mean. But actually, like, if you call out the problem. The problem is you're not used to seeing a woman behave this way. I know you're really not used to a woman that's, you've probably not been around a lot of women that just take the bull by its horns. But I think for us to succeed as a team, I'm going to lead us this way, or we need to go do this, XYZ for us to succeed. And so, yes, it's more work. We have to put the why in front of it. We have to put the why in front of why I'm being a little more assertive, right? So that we get the goal done. But I just think it is a double standard. We do have to do more work. We do have to have authority, and then we have to explain the authority. But I also think there's a little bit of, we're not used to seeing this, are we? Call it out. Well, there are no women supervisors. I'm actually the only one of 3 in the whole company, right? And you can say, and a lot of times this, the immediate reaction to this, and this is documented. Like, you can find studies on this, right? That women are seen as more aggressive and assertive if they just say, do this instead of please do this, right? Like, there's this whole reaction to, oh. But if you call it out and say, we're not used to seeing this, you're not used to seeing this. Culturally, the story is these are mean dragon bosses just because they're firmer. We've had leaders that, they just come off so abrasive, and I'm like, why? A man isn't walking around going, can you please do this? It'd be so great if you do this. Let me tell you why I think we need to do this. Like, they're not doing that. They're just like, hit the goal, go, run, And so even if you can call it out and say, why does this hit us so hard? Even to bring that awareness to your organization or your team, or because I'm not an aggressive person, I'm not but I want us to win. I want us to succeed. And sometimes it's just telling you flat out, without a bunch of please and pretty please and bows on top, that we need to go do this. And so even just calling that out to go, I know this is rare for us, because then you're upending the narrative and the assumption.
Well, and sometimes there are women who are in a more leadership role, and I have a pretty good ear for fake tones. And when I hear sometimes these women are trying to do the please, let's and it's so into that zone of almost coming off sarcastic, because that they're feeling a resentment for having to bring themselves down to this please, pretty please zone. And I get it, because we shouldn't have to keep explaining ourselves and why we're a woman leading hard in any direction when we're in the position to do it, So the pretty please part gets annoying for
it's annoying.
a lot of people.
Exactly. That's why I'm like, can we just upend this so that we can go, guys, we're not going to soften this. Let's just go do the thing that makes us succeed. But that takes work. Again, it takes an explanation. We have a lot of work to do. Yeah.
No. And I realize we're up against the hour, but I'd really like to talk about imposter syndrome, even if only quickly. Is that okay with you guys?
Sure.
Okay, great. Because I think it's so important. And I think so many of us deal with it. And I know I do. That is probably you too, Lou. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you too, Annette. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, gosh. And I mean, I don't know. I don't think I know of a woman who hasn't dealt with it, unless they're some kind of egomaniac, but I don't know anybody who's like that. So, and I even heard Michelle Obama, I've read her books, and, she says explicitly that that's something that she's dealt with. And she said that she's, sat in the rooms with some of the most powerful people in the world, and they're not that smart. But she says, even then she's felt like, why do I belong there? But she's brilliant. I can't understand. That doesn't make sense to me why she would feel that way. I think so often we'll see these other people that we might idolize and think, but they're so smart. They have it all together. How could they possibly think that they don't belong, that they aren't good enough, But then we do that to ourselves. And I'm sure, like Lou, I think you're incredible. You're brilliant. Your brain is like, want to get inside your head. Like, I don't know, you're so smart. The way that Lou thinks about things and sees people is just incredible to me. And I'm fascinated by the way she thinks. And I don't know, sometimes I wonder if you see that in yourself. So I think a lot of you. So, and then she's so encouraging too of others. But yeah, we often don't see that in ourselves. So I don't know, what do you both have to say about imposter syndrome? What do you think about that?
I wrote, okay, so this is a funny story. So like 2021, 22, I'm terrified. This is so ironic that I'm on Substack. Okay, I'm terrified to publish my stuff out in the world. I'm literally the biggest imposter syndrome. I can stand on a stage in front of 5,000 people and give a talk, and I'm not scared to do that. But to like put an article on a Substack or a LinkedIn is like my hands are sweating. I'm gonna throw up, like that, that whole thing, because it's like, are my ideas good enough? I don't know that my ideas are good. I don't know that my writing is good enough, and I have all this. So back in 2021, my coach was like, your job for your birthday is you've got to publish an article on LinkedIn. And I was like, oh my God, I can't, And he's like, nope, that's what you got to do. You got to do that. And so I did it. I posted it. I mean, literally before, it took me all day. I think I posted at 11:58 p.m., because I will hit my deadline. But it was just this inner battle all day long. I'm cleaning the keyboard. I'm like dusting the lampshades. I'm doing anything but like put myself out there, and I called it in front of all the LinkedIn eyes, and they were all, so I wrote an article about a poem about that, and I called it Whispering from the High Dive. And this internal battle I have of climbing this high dive, and we've all been there when we were kids, right? Like you climb up, like 5 steps up, and you're like, oh my God, it's so high, I can't get back down. You get up to you a little higher, and then you go down because you just can't. It's so terrifying. And then finally, I get to the top, and I inch myself to the edge of this diving board, and all the voices in my head is like, what are you doing? You don't belong here. You shouldn't be. I mean, why is anyone going to listen to you? I mean, this is a literal internal battle with my inner critic, by the way. I always keep her picture here. She's super judgy. Her name is Fiona, Fear of Failure.
Fiona, oh no.
But it was this, this whole just inner battle. And then when I finally hit publish, nothing happened. And so I jumped in the water, and then when I came up, there were no voices, there was no critic, instead it was my friends, my colleagues, strangers going, I loved this article, this was great. But the battle, of 24 hours to hit publish was such intensity. And I thought, this is crazy. Like, why are we fighting? And I know women are doing this. I got to go in that boardroom and present this presentation, or I've got to go, teach this, workshop, and it's the first one. I don't know if it's even good enough. We just do that. And I think so it is such a common battle. I think everyone struggles with it anytime you make yourself vulnerable. And one of my favorite, mindset coach, his name is Travis Thomas. He wrote a book called Courage, Why That's the Antidote to Imposter Syndrome. Basically, he was saying right now we're all trying to chase confidence, right? And everyone's like, you need more confidence. And he's like, confidence is a feeling. You can't just like have confidence. This isn't the right. What you actually need to lean into is courage, because courage is a step forward. Courage is something that you can actually lead from. Confidence is sort of a shady little speckledy, foggy thing, right? But courage is actually, so he's shifted my mind thinking about doing courageous steps. And I've done a lot. I still haven't published on Substack though, but maybe after this conversation. But it is so real, and it is so palpable, and it shuts people down. Like it's a true fear. It is a fear, and it can just paralyze you.
Right. And you can only get and be confident by first being courageous to take the actions.
Yeah.
And it's the only way fear gets smaller, confidence grows.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, I've written since I was a little kid, as I think a lot of us here on Substack probably have. It's why we're here, because either we love to read or we love to create in some way, whether that's writing, painting, photography. We're a creative bunch here. But or we love other people's creations, one or the other. But I hadn't shared my writing publicly. I just kept it to myself or showed my family. That was it until last December. And Lou and my boss too had both encouraged me to begin sharing on Substack, and so that's when I started. And I was terrified to do it. Same thing as Lou, although opposite. I could not get up in front of all those people. I don't know how you do that. That's incredible to me. But now I can share my writing, and I don't really think much of it. I just do it all the time now. But I could never still get up in front of all those people. So that's that's pretty awesome that you're able to do that. And I know you've traveled around the world and given speeches in front of all kinds of organizations, and right?
Yeah, well, it was also, they were people within the organization, and I really believed in them and wanted them to. So that this idea of like, can your purpose measure your fear, right? And so the first time you get up, of course, your voice cracks, you're shaking. But once you realize, like, these people have to hear this message today, like, I need you to walk away knowing this. And so this idea of like really getting behind the purpose and the meaning of your why you're doing whatever you're doing, whether it's posting on LinkedIn or Substack or giving a speech or a short lecture somewhere. It's not about me, it's about the message, right? It's about, I need y'all to hear this. I need you to read this. I need you to comprehend this. So like both of your articles about, the Matilda effect, and this idea is like, it came to you because that message had to get out into the world, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And so that helps with the imposter syndrome. But it's when you're not rooted in the purpose part, it can get shaky,
No, you're right.
Why am I doing this? Why is this so important? And that's the thing you gotta, like, before you present something, it's not just, I need to post something on Substack because I said I would post something on Substack, but it's like the message is so important. And I think for me, like, that's been my hesitation, is like, I don't know what my message is that's powerful enough that I go, this has to come out, but I know it will come,
Well, I don't know. I remember we went to an AI symposium on writing a little while ago, last summer, I think. And we were talking about the difference between knowledge and experience, I think. I remember that was a really good discussion. And I remember you saying something about writing about that. See, I didn't forget, because I was looking forward to reading that.
Oh, yeah, this was about, yeah. AI. Yeah. Okay, that's back. I need to pull that notebook out. I've got it half written. I do need to write it.
No, you've got enough to do. I know you're writing your dissertation, so I'll leave you alone, but I'm just half teasing you. No, there's so many good things for us to write about, though. There's so much to be passionate about. And like you were saying earlier, like, as we've all been discussing, there's so much work for us all to do, as and not just as women, for men too, for all of us to do as human beings, and for us to come together in balance and to celebrate one another, in all of our expressions. And that's the truth of it, to hold one another honestly and sincerely in our truths, and to allow us to shine as we really are, and to respect one another in that way, and leave room for each other without caging us into one set of ideas or beliefs, and to say that is the one prescribed way. I think there's room for everybody, and we just have to remember that and leave room for everybody. So that's my TED Talk. Yeah.
It was so interesting. It was so nice. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you so much for coming. Yeah, thank you, Annette. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I love doing these talks. This is great.
This was good.
Yeah. It always goes by so fast. It's the only bad thing. All this preparation for but yeah, this is a good book. It is available online too. And if you see my article, and actually I can share it again. It's my She Who Holds the Sky article, which I will post the link right now. A free version of the PDF of this book is available within my article. So you can click on the link to skim through this if you want. And there's a lot of really good information. It's dense, I'm not gonna lie, but if you skim through it, there's some really good information in here. She really goes into it, how the church and the state are working together pretty much to conspire to suppress us. And she saw it back then before it was, as it was taking form, before it actually became what it is today. So she's brilliant. You know, she saw things before they happened, and nobody listened. We should have listened. See, should have just listened to a woman, and everything would have been fine.
Well, it's time now. So
that's right. It's time now. That's right. It's time to start listening.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, you guys.
Thanks, everyone. Bye, everyone.
Have a good weekend. Bye, everybody.
Bye, Annette.
Bye.
Bye.